Okay, so our recipe have been distributed. We're going to take our 2 recipes that we've been given, and we're going to create a word list. The first step here of our process is we're going to create a word list. And that word list is going to be based on the two recipes we've been given. And so this student has Lone Star Poblano mac and cheese and veggie burrito bowl. And they've put a word list together: colorful, southern, flavorful, vegetarian, fun, seasoned, mixed, contemporary, creative, hot. And from that, they pulled out 2 of the words that they felt were something they could work with to give them a design compass for their design. And they chose flavorful and fun. So from there, they went on and took the copy, some of the copy they received, and started to do what we call a type study or a type sample. And it's where we start by taking and looking at different typefaces, different scale, size, and try to start thinking about how we want to approach the type for this publication. So you can see that they are looking at a couple different typefaces. You're going to have a typeface. They're using 2 typefaces, one for the headline of the name of the recipe. There's also a secondary type that they've chosen to make a different typeface. You don't have to. There's also the introduction text, which is right here. And then there's the ingredients list. So I would like you to do the same thing where you're taking your name of your recipe, the introduction paragraph, and your ingredients list. Now, like I said, you don't need to keep these allergen information. You can take those out of the copy and edit the copy that way. But remember some of the things we saw in the examples we saw, like, do we keep the body copy and the ingredients list the same? This student also forgot to use the little subheader ingredients. That would be helpful too, to see how would you want to treat a subheader. So I would have kept that in if it were me. But you can see that they've made these choices and they've put the name of the typefaces they're using right here in their layouts. They've also numbered each one, 1, 2, 3, 4. We're working online, and it's really helpful to have your studies numbered so we can refer to them by the number. So they've created a grid and put like 6 to a page, and that seems pretty reasonable. You might even do less if you want. But again, don't just vary the typefaces, also vary the size. Think about, should it be 8 on 10 or 12 on or 8 on 12 or 10 on 11. This particular example is just showing typefaces changing, but this is not just changing typeface. You're also looking at the size of the type, the size of the leading, and you want to do go through, and we're going to be doing multiple of these so we can really get a feel for which ones. And so you can see that first round, I think there were 12 in this first round. And then moving in, they made some more choices as they got a little further along. Now starting to think about, oh, maybe this is italic. Maybe these should be the same typeface, but just different sizes. Some of those choices, playing with the length of the column width. Still keeping notes on what typefaces they're using, still numbering them. So it's really handy for us to review. So this isn't about laying out the page. This is purely just looking at how do we want to look at the typeface and how that is interacting with each other and how legible it is. So this is where it'd be very helpful to print these out if you have access to a printer so you can get examples. So here's some notes that were taken, talking about some of the things to think about, like the subhead maybe being bold. Of course, we were talking about taking out the allergens, some of those notes. Next, so I'm not going to worry about some of the next steps, but that's going to be, so that's our basically one of our, are there any questions about what we're talking about when we start talking about making type studies?
No.
Okay. All right. So then I'm going to scoot over to grid sketches. So let me zoom into the grid sketches. Okay, so here are the grid sketches. Notice they're laid out in spreads. So this is page 1, this is page 2. They're using, just pencil on grid paper and then photographing it. Notice that they're really thinking about the copy they've been received. They're looking at how many steps their particular recipe has. So if you've been given a recipe and it has 6 steps, indicate that in your sketches. If you only have 4 steps, indicate that in your sketches. Make it based on the actual copy you have. So you have a headline, you're going to have a subhead, you're going to have an instructions, you're going to have allergy tags. So they're thinking about where they're going to put the allergies. There's utensils, there's nutrition information. There's a sidebar. Here they're designing where that sidebar is going to go. They know there's an ingredient list and an instruction list and a picture that has to be in. So this is not random boxes of copy. They're actually definitely related exactly to the copy they received. And then this is the next spread that has to work within the same system. So there has to be, it's the same grid. So you can see it's still a 3-column grid. So they're using, the first thing they're doing is setting up the 3-column grid. They still have their headline. The allergens are treated the same way. The description, the ingredients, they just flipped it. You do want your pages to have some things that kind of move around so that brings interest. It looks like this second recipe had more utensils, so they gave it more room. Instructions and nutrition, they moved. This is another design, and this one they're exploring putting all of the step-by-step photos in. So they've indicated the photos are squares with X's in them, and they're indicating a headline. Let me just zoom in on one so you can see it clearly. So they're looking at the photo at the top of the page, headline, subhead, description, the tags of allergens and prep time and difficulty all in a box. The ingredients list over here. Maybe it's a little too wide. They're exploring what that might look like. Utensils, the sidebar. What would it look like if they included all 6 step-by-step photos? And here's the second spread. Here's one with just one really big photo, and so on and so forth. So you're seeing the sketches are kind of exploring all the different layouts. This one you can see has a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-column grid. So here we've got a 5-column grid with 2 spreads. Here there's a 1, 2, 3, 4-column grid with 2 spreads. And the first set is a 3-column grid, 1, 2, 3 column. We too are going to do 3 sets of grid sketches, and each set is going to have a different grid layout. So this is one set, which is 4 pages, because we're doing 4 pages. And so there's 3 columns. All 4 pages use the 3-column grid. And this next one, which is 4-column grid, all 4 pages use the 4-column grid. And then we go down here, and this is a 5-column grid, and all 4 pages are using a 5-column grid. Is everyone following that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then here, after their critique with their small groups, these are some of the edits or changes they were thinking about. And then later on, the student decided to think about some iconography and making icons for some of their different tags. So you don't always have to use words. Sometimes we use icons. And then after this phase, they would move into the midpoint reflection. And I'm going to pause there because I don't want to move ahead too far. So what we're going to be doing for this week is focusing on creating 3 sets of grid sketches and doing our type studies. I'm going to scoot over here to this type studies. Oops, stop. And we're going to move into the type studies. You don't have to put them all on one page like this. You can put fewer on a page. It's up to you. This is, what they did for their ultimately for their process book. But the thing I want you to do that this particular student didn't do is they just looked at typefaces. They didn't look at scale and size and that type of thing. I want to make sure you're thinking of both. And they did do that when they got further along in the process. Okay. So I'm also going to pull up our cookbook brief.
I think this might be anxiety talking, but over spring break, our assignment is to work on the project, not to hand in the project when we come back, right? Or are we
Right,
like doing everything and then handing in a process book when we come back from spring break?
You're just
Okay,
doing
okay.
No. You are just doing your sketches and your type studies. And we'll be looking at those when you come back from spring break.
Okay,
Not
sorry,
your
I scared.
process book. Yeah, don't, I'm showing it to you in a process book just because it's easier. That's where I have it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Sorry, anxiety.
It's just sketching and type studies. Those are the 2 things we're doing. These are prep before we even get into layout. We're not, oh my gosh, I need a bigger table. This is ridiculous. We're just looking at layout, sketches. So just like we do every project, it's just a little different because we're not sketching type this time, we're sketching layouts. So we're doing 3 sets of sketches, layout sketches, and we're doing our type studies. And I'm just pulling up the project brief and I'm going to show you one more time on the project brief just to make it straightforward. And then when we come back from spring break, that's when we're going to start talking about which type studies feel right for our compass that we've created. We're creating our compass, our design compass, and which sketches are working. And then after we get back from spring break, we'll start getting into digital roughs and we'll start talking about color and in InDesign type tools and getting further into InDesign. So what we're going to do all of that when we come back from spring break. All you're doing between now and coming back from spring break are sketching and type studies. Those are the 2 parts of the project you're working on. Let me share my screen one more time. Here it is. Okay, so here's what we're doing. It's just step 1 and 2. Research your asset collection and adjectives, type studies, and layout grid sketches. Though that's what we're doing for the week we come back to share the week we come back from spring break. So on Tuesday after spring break, nothing is being handed in during spring break at all. It's when you come back. So we're going to use the first, like I showed you, the first parts of our headline, our name of our recipe, the first paragraph, and the ingredients list. We're going to explore different paragraph settings with our typeface. Try the text with different combinations of texts and typeface. point size, line spacing, and line lengths. Start with the ones mimicking the ones you studied for this week. So take whatever you had in your studies that you did for your dissection of the cookbooks you've already dissected, and go ahead and set that. Think about typefaces that you've already become familiar with. Go through the Adobe catalog and look at Adobe fonts and see, like, let's say, for example, the example I showed you was fun and colorful. So thinking about what typefaces kind of feel fun, or is maybe you're doing a cookbook for, you've decided your theme is going to be for a child. So then think about what would a typeface that would be readable for a child, what would work for them, and go through Adobe Type and kind of get some examples of that. You want to take that type study and think about, it has to be easy to read. This is a handheld publication. You want to test the readability of your studies on your friends. Use the line lengths and chosen paragraph style. Play with how wide the columns should be. Should they be wide columns? Should they be narrow columns? What's easier to read? Really thinking about, the more of this preliminary work we do, the easier to be when we actually get it into a layout. So the idea of studying, doing type studies and grid sketches is, again, to be prepared and really be thinking through our design, being strategic, thinking about our design before we get into, even on the computer, this, with InDesign. You want to, the type studies are going to be, done on InDesign, but just on an 8.5, 11 page. They're not on the layout. You're not laying anything out. You're just putting looking at different type sizes and point sizes, leading sizes, and different typefaces. So I want to see you do 12, a minimum of 12 different a minimum of 12 different type studies, and then you're doing 3 sets of your grid sketches, okay? Yes, Ying.
Questions about the week 10. So that means that we have to see the spring ahead activity too.
Spring ahead activities. I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. I'll come back to that. Any other questions about, so we're in week 9 and you have week 9's checklist. And so for this week, we are, what do I have on here? Oh, I'm sorry. So I have on here for this week, we're going to be completing a minimum of 10 type studies. Your type study should include a headline, the subhead, 1 paragraph, the body copy, and the ingredient list. Okay. I've demoed the grid sketching in class. Do I have the numbers in here? Yeah. And the completing 3 sets of grid sketches for the 2 spreads. So 1 spread includes all of 1 recipe, and the second spread includes all of the second recipe and the sidebar. So we're going to be sharing these when we return from spring break. I've also included in here a reading the Lupton's Thinking with Type text chapter. And I've also incorporated a reading on paragraph indentation and a vocabulary list for publications, just to kind of get you familiar with some of the vocabulary we'll be using as we move into more publication design. The spring ahead activities. Hold on, am I sharing my screen? I don't think I am. Hold on, let me share my screen. The spring ahead activities are optional. These are purely for those of you who want to dive deeper and kind of get a head start on some information, some tutorials, and I have some fun things in there. So if you are looking for more fun with type, I've put together a spring ahead activities. These are completely optional, but let me tell you what's in them. So the following LinkedIn Learning, a lot of these are LinkedIn Learning. The first video LinkedIn Learning class I put on here is Sean Adams. Sean Adams was my Art Center professor back when I was in college, and he has done a LinkedIn Learning class called Layout and Composition, which I think is excellent, and it really walks you through the work we're going to be doing the second half of the semester. If you want to brush up on your InDesign skills, if you're feeling like you would like to feel more confident in InDesign, there's 2 InDesign based on typography courses on LinkedIn that I recommend. The InDesign Typography Part 1, focus on chapters 4, 5, and 6. You don't necessarily have to watch the whole thing. And then the second one is InDesign Typography Part 2, focuses on chapter 5, 6, and 7, but really the whole video is pretty important. So those are, for those of you who want to get stronger at InDesign, these are some tutorials you can watch, which I would recommend. Then for those of you who just want to have fun, I have some fun typography links. One is 9 ridiculously good examples of kinetic typography. And the second one is Weird Type, which is an Adobe app by Zach Lieberman, and it only works on, it's in the App Store. I'm not sure, for a while I think it only worked on Apple iPhones, but by now it might work on both Android. I'm not 100% sure though. But Weird Type is an AR app that lets you paint with text in space. It's a lot of fun to play with, and you can type your own phrases and pick from multiple modes and see your text completely in new ways. We're using AR. So if any of you are curious about AR and type, this is a fun app to get. And then if you want to dive deeper into type and culture, there is a great free course called Typography Messages of Protest for Civil Rights that I highly recommend. So these are all 100% optional spring ahead activities, and they're just, I put them together for you, for those of you who want to dive deeper into any one of these areas. I just make them available to you.
Can you check the first link, because I click it and it's not working.
The Sean Adams link?
Yeah.
Let me see. You're right, it isn't working. Oh, I copied them over. They must have moved them. Okay, I will go back and fix them. I'll check and figure out where they've been moved. And I will go in and double check that. I moved them over from my other site and I didn't have a chance to check them. So I'll fix that. Thank you for letting me know. All right. Any other questions about that? I think I'm going to go ahead and end our recording.